Well, the previous congressional speaker there, she said they don't grow much bananas in America, but there's plenty of bananas in Washington, as we will show you shortly. This whole story has just completely exploded here. We'll look at this up on screen. Now, I tweeted this on Monday, April of 7th here, and I predicted that Trump would get pressure from the donor class and that he would then suspend the tariffs that he put on across the board to the entire world. And looks like that's exactly what happened. And I even quoted him almost verbatim on Monday. I predicted what Donald was going to say. We're postponing the implementation of the tariffs because, quite frankly, what we've done is so great. Just the announcement has already had such a great impact on governments and now begging us for a deal. That's what I predicted Donald would say, and it's true. So here we are. This is the result. This is a bottle. This reminds us of, you could say, Kevin Keegan's England team. But anyway, it looks like Trump has bottled it. The pressure came, and he did cave. Trump announces a 90-day pause on the tariff war, except for China, except for one country. So that's interesting. Now, this is where things are going to get a little bit dicey for the Trump administration. Let's take a look. There's Donald there. I guess he's claiming victory, Charles, but it seems to be anything but, because this has started a tit for tat with China that is now getting unbelievably ridiculous. Take a look at this. Consider these two are among each other's greatest trading partners. China has raised tariffs in reciprocation to what the U.S. has done. China raised tariffs on all U.S. goods up to 125% as the trade war ramps up. Now, that's in response to Trump putting on 40 or 50%. There's been so many changes in the last 48 hours, it's hard to keep track of it here. But Trump, not to be outdone, here he is. The White House says that a tariff rate on most Chinese imports will now be 145%. Where is this going to end? And, the whole basis of this, and this is the strange thing, Trump has called this trade war on a national emergency. And one has to look at the predicate for this. One of them was a fentanyl crisis. Okay, some fentanyl coming over the Mexican border. They're blaming China for it. It's a bit tenuous, but they're saying that, and we'll bring the order up on screen here. This is what the White House published here. And then they're saying, no, this is a national emergency because of a trade deficit. But the thing is, how could it be an emergency when the United States has had a trade deficit since 1934? So it's taking them, over, I don't know, something like 80, 90 years to work out this so-called emergency here. So he's invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 in order to ram this emergency through. But globalization's been going since the 90s. Pretty much full steam. So it's not as if this was a surprise, but nonetheless, they're carrying on with this right now. Let's take a look here. There's the Donald. And so this is what the line is here. You probably heard this. Everyone's heard this. They're ripping us off. They're ripping us off. We're getting a terrible deal. Donald's been saying this actually since before he became president here. But are they really ripping the U.S. off? Let's take a look at the facts. No, actually, in actuality, the U.S. is ripping everybody else off by exporting their fiat dollars in exchange for actual valuable goods. This is the advantage the U.S. has had because they have the world reserve currency. This allows the U.S. to deficit spend by the tune over $2 trillion per year. And with that $2 trillion, they're able to fund their military industrial complex. They're able to project power globally, power and influence globally, effectively run a global empire on the U.S. dollar system. The U.S. has been running a trade deficit since 1934, fact. And the deficit is roughly the amount of government spending versus how much they produce. So there's a deficit there. It's almost mathematical as an equation. The U.S. deficit is not caused by other countries ripping off America. It's caused because the United States has gone through the process of offshoring its manufacturing. It used to be an industrial power, but now it's a financial power. It's to financialize its economy. Guess who's an industrial power? China. China's doing what the United States did back in 1890, and that's the golden years that Trump and his team keep hearkening back to. So this conversation, just the more you look at it, it just doesn't add up. And we go on. Exporting dollars in exchange for debt props up the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency, as we said earlier. And here's the key point. This is essentially a corrupt system which allows the U.S. to pay for all of these wars on its national credit card. This is what it comes down to. It's not about other countries ripping off the president here. And, when Trump, and this is so tariff fallacies, this is the tariff chart. This is the calculations on this was totally arbitrary and completely bogus. He's been panned by the pundits for this year. He's even getting panned by the financial press on this. Fortune. Some of these are generally pro-conservative, pro-Trump publications here. Trump's tariff formula used the wrong value in its calculations, conservative think tank says. This whole thing was rigged. They're talking about this entire tariff farrago. The formula the White House used to calculate its recent tariffs is based on an error that roughly quadrupled the rates from what they should have been. So, this is a serious problem here when we're talking about competency of the Trump administration. He's the businessman. He's known as the billionaire, the moneymaker, the deal maker. How could he get the economics and the numbers so horribly wrong? And we'll continue here. More tariff fallacies. There he is again. He's still angry. He's saying, we'll correct the deficit with money raised from tariffs. That's the claim the Trump administration's making. But actually, punitive tariffs de-incentivizes trade with the U.S., meaning less revenue. A recession is coming now because of a lack of confidence. Inflation is moving in, meaning less affordability and demand, and no immediate, quote, cheap U.S.-made goods to replace the expensive imports. We're looking at 5 to 10 years away from the United States becoming reindustrialized, even if they had all of their eggs in their ducks in a row on that score. So second fallacy, it worked in 1890 when the U.S. had tariffs and no income tax. This is the basis of the whole gambit here from the Trump administration, at least the public-facing pitch. 1890, the U.S., again, as I said, had an industrial economy, and the U.S. ran massive trade surpluses back then. This is why their foreign policy became more aggressive, because they needed markets at that time for their products. So they were having a de-inflationary period, and they needed to expand. That was the beginning of the U.S. empire. 2025, however, we have a financialized economy, and the U.S. has offshored its manufacturing mostly for the better part of 30 years, but actually in reality, even before that. Okay, now for some trade tariff realities here. And some realities, let's just lay it on the table. Tariffs have further triggered inflation. Fact. Recession, stagflation, collapse in the bond market. Arguably, this is where the pressure came onto Trump from some of his billionaires who have all of their money in long plays on the stock market. The stock markets have taken a beating, not just in the U.S., but internationally here. A rise in the cost of living. That means lower living standards. Wiping out gains from trade. So buying cheaper imports, selling advantaged goods, that's the normal gains from trade that the U.S. would normally have in this very delicate balance of a global trading system. Trump is just basically taking a wrecking ball to this in the course of a week or two. Unbelievable and unprecedented here. Fewer U.S. goods means more expensive at home, as well more expensive to export. So no significant trade in the trade balance. This is what the experts are saying. There's not going to be a big difference in the trade deficit. The result is going to be less trade both coming in and going out. So this is a contraction of the economy. This is what Trump has done by disrupting the economy. And this is why a lot of people are really going crazy in the analytical world here. Stock market crashes, trillions have been wiped out on market cap. And here's the main point, further wrecking the U.S. economy, wrecking the world trading system. It might not be ideal for the United States, but the United States didn't have goods to export. And that is not the fault of China or anybody else in the world. What they're trying to do is punish everybody else for their problems. And this is not going to go down well for future relationships here. And we'll just move forward and see. Okay, and this is a good point here. And we'll bring this next up on stage. Americans need a little history lesson, and I'm sure even the British know this. The Boston Tea Party, December 16, 1773. No taxation without representation. Mark Anderson did a great job in showing the issue of the congressional authority. Trump, as one man, is trying to basically levy taxes effectively here, but really also messing with the entire global trade system here. So this is a drawing made by a fifth grade student. So I would direct the Trump economic team to this fifth grade student just to remind themselves, and we bring an irony alert in here, Charles, that the Boston Tea Party originally was to bail out the British East India Company. Parliament wanted to maintain that ability to tax the colonies, but it was really about bailing out the corporations on that. They had a huge balance of payments problems with the British government at the time, but this is another key issue. European markets were very weak at the time due to debts from the French and Indian wars, among other wars at the time. Does this sound familiar? It certainly does. And so you have all these monopolies back in the day, back in the late 1700s, and it created a situation, and that was only a 2% tax, Charles, and it was enough for the colonists to rebel. And look at what they're throwing now on imports and exports, these tariff wars. It dwarfs even what was going on back then. So we can learn a little bit from history, and again, note the irony alert. So a lot of Trump fans are saying this is just 3D chess. He's escalating to de-escalate, right? Or 6 million D chess, as it's now being called. Escalate to de-escalate. But is it really, or do they actually know what they're doing? And, to be very critical here, and we'll show you a video clip in a second, every millionaire I've spoken to or who I follow has made an absolute killing in the last week. They have put short positions down. They made tons of money. Working folks I know have had their retirement savings slashed by 20 to 30%. It's been an absolute rout, again, for the middle class, and it's surely not going to be good for the working class. And Donald Trump is the man of the people. He Boris breached the Red Wall. Donald Trump captured the Rust Belt and got all those blue dog Reagan Democrats back. So listen to this. This is from the White House just, I believe, yesterday. This is Trump with the famous Charles Schwab of Charles Schwab brokerage fame here, and they're boasting about how much money that they made in the last week. Watch this.
This is Charles Schwab. It's not just a company, it's actually an individual. And he made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. That's not bad, because he's in financials. I've always been following.
So there it is. I mean, right straight from the horse's mouth. They absolutely rinsed it, these guys. I mean, it's kind of like insider trading, but on a galactic scale. And he was even tweeting out things like, whoever runs his Twitter account, now is a good time to buy, when the stock market was at its absolute low. So this is like dog whistles to Wall Street. Plus there is a ticker symbol for one of the Trump businesses as well that went out on another Trump account. I mean, it's kind of a free-for-all. So anyway, let's look at the wrap-up on this here. We'll bring this up on stage right now. Trump's real agenda. Okay, the golden age of America. He wants to bring us back to McKinley's 1890. Let's look at the reality. This is the real agenda. Trump is trying to force down the value of the U.S. dollar in order to refinance $9 trillion in U.S. debt. Okay, that's the number one priority. And they're not really articulating that to the public very clearly, and that's part of the problem. That's actually the core. So the world has to suffer for U.S. domestic fiduciary responsibility issues, right? So increase external revenue, claims Trump, in order to pay for massive tax cuts, probably for the rich, like in 2017. So a loss of internal revenue and totaling $4 trillion over the next 10 years. So that massive tax cut, is that really going to get paid for with the tariff and trade balance? It doesn't look like it will. It's debatable. The signals don't look good right now. Anyway, massive deregulation, massive privatization, and so incentivizing direct investment. But this is a problem. This is also why the cost of living is so high. This is why China has the edge. They have state-run utilities. They're able to control and subsidize the cost of energy. This is why they're an industrial powerhouse, because they have a hybrid, mixed economy, just like the United States did back in the late 1800s. And again, Trump and his team need a history lesson. They seem to be cherry picking American history here, but not to be outdone here, allowing for wild levels of Washington insider trading. Listen, what we're showing you is just the tip of that iceberg. And then here, bypassing Congress, as Mark pointed out, that key issue earlier, the power of the purse on living tax. This is a huge problem. It's really putting the power into the hands of one man. So this is ultimately weakening Congress with one person rule. This is an autocracy. Fair question. Main point, zero-sum policy, trying to control who trades with who, etc., like with Russia, like with India and Russian oil. Nord Stream pipeline is a result of zero-sum foreign policy here. And so what are we really looking at? And this is the big fear. Effectively, Trump is trying to sanction China through tariffs, to isolate China, to build an iron curtain like they've done with Russia economically. How did that work out with Russia? Russia's got projecting 3% growth. Europe's projecting 0% growth. So Russia's beat this system, outperformed the U.S. and Europe, and China arguably is set to do the same, Charles. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the main takeaway here. This is hard foreign policy done through economic policy, and I don't know if this is going to end well for Trump.
Well, we shall see. It's certainly gone very well for the billionaire class who have made money at every turn. And as we see consistently, you invoke the emergency and then you watch the money roll in. So that there is some capital to be made. But of course, the idea that Trump is standing tough against China is something that can be sold to a certain extent. I wonder also about the, if we're moving a few steps closer to central bank digital currency with a acceleration of the collapse, but more to talk about in